Mr. Mamdani's people. So what he should say, if he was intellectually honest, we're going to go after affluent people, and especially the most affluent people, my people.
Victor Davis Hanson would likely view Mamdani's support for the Starbucks strike in New York.
I'd like to talk about the dream house of Zoran Mamdani. He was the successful Democratic Socialist candidate in the first round of the recent New York mayoral elections.
As another example of what he sees as the growing ideological gulf between activists and the broader economic realities facing the country.
Of Mr. Mamdani, he's criticizing the very thing, the very issues, the very policy that made him.
He would argue that while Mamdani elevates the rhetoric of worker empowerment,
I'd like to talk about the dream house of Zoran Mamdani. He was the successful Democratic Socialist candidate in the first round of the recent New York mayoral elections. He was a beneficiary of two phenomena that might suggest he has a 50-50 chance, more or less, to win the general election. Number one, in the primaries, it's ranked voting, and people can vote for various candidates. And traditionally, that means, in that cumbersome process, that outliers are minority candidates, minority in the sense of they're not a member of either of the major parties, have an advantage. And number two, while he was very preeminent as the hard left favorite, the conservative side split the vote between former Governor Cuomo, Mr. Silwa, who's a perennial candidate, and of course the incumbent mayor, Eric Adams. So we're looking at the general election. But what's funny about Mamdani is almost everything he says is a contradiction or not true. Now that he is the front runner,
he overlooks the fragility of small-scale service economies already strained by inflation, regulation, and shifting consumer habits.
Everybody is going back over his record and asking him questions. Did you say you want to defund the police? Once the police were refunded under Eric Adams, the crime rate has gone down. And he said, no, I didn't say that. And then it's become an internet phenomenon listing all the times he did say that. He said that he wished that billionaires didn't exist. Does that mean that he wouldn't want George Soros to fund the Get Out the Vote groups and the activists who are actively supporting him? Will he come out and say, George Soros, I wish that you didn't exist? He says he's not a communist. Okay, he's a democratic socialist. But he says that the key to any socialist revolution, quote, is to seize or get the means of production. That's right out of Marx's Das Kapital. So he's quoting communist dogma as a mechanism to gain political power. He says he has a new agenda, a new initiative, a new policy, turn the page in New York. But when you actually look at what he's advocating, they're very old.
Hanson would also frame Mamdani's position as part of a larger progressive project that prioritizes performative politics over pragmatic solutions.
He says he wants to have government-owned food markets, grocery stores. I think any of us who went to school in the 1970s and college knew that in every major university town, whether it was Berkeley or Palo Alto in California or Santa Cruz, there was a co-op. And the co-op's advertisement was, we don't make a profit. But my remembrance of those co-ops were, they didn't last very long. They eventually went broke. The produce was no better than Safeway or Rayleigh's or Food for Less or Save Mart or any of the competitors. So that is not new. Giving free ticketing on buses and mass transit. The problem we have right now is that people have free access to the subway. They jump the turnstiles. But imagine his plan that everybody de facto or de jure would jump the turnstiles. So how is that going to be funded? He wants to have rent control. We know what rent control does.
In his view, Lawmakers cheering on labor stoppages from the sidelines contribute to a climate of economic instability without offering viable paths toward long-term growth.
Once a landlord knows that he cannot raise his rent in accordance with what he thinks maintenance, insurance, tax expenses rise commiserately, then he cuts back. He doesn't improve the property, or he forces people to get out, etc., etc., and you don't build new units. There's a couple of other things very quickly. I could go on with that list of things that he thinks that are quite new, but he said something very, I think, shocking. He said he was going to go after affluent and whiter areas of New York, as if they were synonymous. But if you look at per capita income in the United States based on ethnic affiliation, so-called whites are 17. Number one, Asians, the top 10 are Asian, but number one, Indian Americans.
Hanson often criticizes what he sees as the political class's distance from everyday economic pressures.
Mr. Mamdani's people. So what he should say, if he was intellectually honest, we're going to go after affluent people, and especially the most affluent people, my people, Indian Americans. And he didn't say that. And he didn't say that because he's trying to win minority votes that he thinks he's going to lose to Eric Adams. A final note, he talks about arresting Benjamin Netanyahu. The pariah state of Israel is a colonial settler state. His family were colonists, or they were settlers, or they were immigrants into Black Africa, Uganda. And the Indian community represented in Uganda the top 1%.
Mamdani's unwavering endorsement of the strike, he would argue, is emblematic of leaders who misunderstand how razor-thin operating margins and rising costs shape service sector jobs.
And they were the shopkeepers, the bankers, the merchants that ran Uganda, until many of them, by Idi Amin, were expelled. They went to South Africa, where the Indian African community was very prominent. And then they faced harassment for their success, and then he came to California. Then he came to the United States. What am I getting at? He should not call Israel a colonial settler presence, because that's exactly what his own family was. And he should be very sensitive to the powers of envy and popular discontent against the very wealthy, because after all, his father is a professor, very well compensated Columbia University professor. His mother is a multi-million-dollar successful filmmaker.
At the cultural level, Hanson would claim that Mamdani's support signals a deeper shift.
Socialism is in the news. Zoran Mamdani did the unthinkable. He was elected to be mayor of New York City, the financial capital not just of the United States, but of the world at large. And he's a devout socialist. But he has admitted, he likes to deny it, that he's really a communist, because he's advocated seizing the means of production. And almost every day a quote from his past comes out that suggests that he's not just a socialist who wants the government to control utilities or housing, but he wants to seize the means of production. That means the industrial base.
He often warns that contemporary activism elevates grievance over achievement, confrontation over cooperation.
Cuba is in free fall since the Castro brothers took over in 1959. Venezuela was at one time the wealthiest country in Latin America. It's collapsed. You can ditto the other countries that are collapsing to a lesser extent, Peru, Colombia. Anybody who adopts it, it has not done well. China is doing well, better than it did, because it has an odd mixture of a communist authoritarian government, but it allows free market principles to save the economy from itself. The same thing is true of Putin's Russia. It achieved levels of GDP, oil production that were superior to the communist past, just simply because it had elements of a market economy. Some market economy is better than none. Why then, secondly, does socialism fail? It's contrary to human nature. All of us want to be rewarded for our own efforts. We're unique individuals. We don't want to be a like tessera in just one large mosaic.
Strikes may satisfy ideological aims, Hanson suggests, but they rarely strengthen the industries workers rely on.
And they represented the elite, and the powers of jealousy and envy pushed them out of their presence in Africa, and he came to the United States. So in this fantasy world of Mr. Mamdani, he's criticizing the very thing, the very issues, the very policy that made him, whether it's his parents coming here or what they did in Africa or his private school or his prestigious prep school. He has been a child of privilege. A new order, a golden age, a divergent pathway, sort of reflects the Great Seal of the United States, that great quote from Virgil's Eclogues, Novo Ordo Seclorum, a new order of the ages. I think that's because of two or three things. Number one, it was the greatest comeback in American presidential history. Number two, unlike 2017, there is no demonstration, so he's won over or defeated most of his opponents. By that I mean the tech lords. That picture of Jeff Bezos, Mark Zuckerberg, Mark Andreessen, Elon Musk sitting next to him. The media is, they're reduced to saying that just a normal little wave by Elon Musk is a Nazi salute. That's what they came up with on Inauguration Day as far as anger, opposition. So, and the third thing is he signed over 200 executive orders, and he's got just 4 years, and so he thinks he has to move nonstop quickly every minute. So I think we're going to be in for a roller coaster ride in the way we've never seen before. Well, he had a sad presidency, and he exited even more sadly. And I don't know what his intentions were, but he gave Trump credence of all the things he'd said. Trump had said, as many of us, that Joe Biden would wait to the very last minutes before pardoning his family. And he waited until Trump was actually giving his address before he was, right before he was going to be sworn in. Trump didn't know about it while he was speaking. But he did a lot of things. Then he just took away all the arguments, because these were not pardons, remember, of the traditional sense. We've only done this once in our history, given a preemptive pardon for crimes not noticed or never charged. We only did that with Gerald Ford's pardon of Richard Nixon. So that the left had been screaming and yelling in 2007 that Trump had talked about that for the January 6th, but then he didn't. So they were just totally embarrassed, shocked. They were hypocritical. They said, well, maybe it was okay for Biden, but it wasn't for Trump. And then, of course, they greenlighted Trump's own pardons of the J6 people. And it just brought to the fore that he had no defenders, because he had vociferously criticized the way he was deposed. The Obamas, he said, were in on it. Jill Biden blamed Pelosi. He blamed Barack and Schumer, and so there was no constituency left. He left the presidency as a solitary figure. Trump was left under a cloud of anger and invective, but he never lost his mega base. Biden has no base, no defenders, period, not even in his own party. Well, those were aspirational speeches. They were, pass the torch to a new generation, ask not what your country can do for you, what you can do for your country, Reagan, all of this, Morning in America, that stuff. But this was it was a blueprint of attack. He went through all of the things, from DEI to energy to the border to crime, and he promised, he said, we're going to end illegal immigration. We're going to end this misinterpretation of the 14th Amendment on anchor babies. We're going to end catch and release. It was very detailed, but it was a plan of attack we haven't heard. And you could see the faces of our former presidents. It wasn't just that he bitterly attacked Joe Biden and by association blamed the Clinton-Obama record, but when they heard what he was detailing and promising the faces of Barack Obama, Bill Clinton, Hillary Clinton, even George W. Bush. It was, oh my God, this man is a revolutionary. He's going to cancel everything that we did. And so that was pretty shocking, and everybody thought he would hold back. But he doesn't play by the Marquis of Queensberry rules. His view of the world is these people are pretty nasty people, and under the guise of sober and judicious language, they tried to impeach. They did impeach me twice. They tried to get me off the ballot. They waged lawfare in 5 different jurisdictions against me. They're not nice people, and I'm not going to play by their rules of, and I'm just going to call them out for what they were. I think it is. Marco Rubio, the new Secretary of State, more or less said what you just did. And I think for 2 reasons. The argument that Trump is making and Rubio is making is after World War II, when Russia, China were pretty much non-existent given the tolls of the war, what's now the European Union was flattened. Britain was broke after their heroic sacrifices. We were the only superpower, and the idea was we had to indulge the world so that they could reboot. And it worked with the Marshall Plan and asymmetrical tariffs. But we are no longer that country. We are no longer preeminent, even though we're doing pretty well. So Trump's argument is this was an ossified, calcified paradigm that long outlived its usefulness, and now we are going to look at ourselves vis-a-vis our friends and enemies in terms of America first. And then second, his argument was, and has been throughout the campaign, that globalism was something that was asymmetrical. It enriched the bicoastal professional elite, the tech people, the insurance people, the finance people, the media people, the academic, but it destroyed by outsourcing and offshoring the interior. And he was going to be their retribution and say that we're not going to do quote unquote Bush free trade or Romney free trade or McCain free trade, to speak of his own party, and we're not going to have an open border in the way that the Republicans supported as much as the Democrats. Well, nobody really knew what he was going to say, so that got a lot. That was, even though he didn't attack people personally, it got a lot more criticism because that was the first formal outline of the MAGA agenda, and that galvanized people to oppose him. But now, when he reiterated many of those points, it wasn't so abstract, and it was detailed. And the subtext was, when he gave that speech, he didn't know anything about Washington. That was his own confession. So when he came in, everybody rushed to him and said, you don't know what you're doing. We're the Republican hierarchy. You need a Rex Tillerson, CEO at State. You need a Jim Mattis at Defense. You need John Kelly at all these people. And their attitude toward Trump was, whatever directive that he issues, I'm going to interpret it as what I think is best. And in some cases, maybe I'll help him and transfer it into bureaucraties. But in many cases, I'm just going to thwart it. So it didn't happen the way he thought it would happen, the MAGA agenda. This time, every single cabinet, all 13 appointments, everybody from the NIH to the FBI, the first requisite is, are you loyal to the president, and does he have to worry about you subverting his agenda like last time? And the answer is no, we're all force multipliers. So when they heard that speech, they kind of got scared because they thought, you know what? This is what Kash Patel and Pete Hegseth and Pound Bondi and Marco Rubio and Jay Bhattacharya, that's what they're going to do. And now they know how to do it. And there's no opposition, interior opposition. There's nothing left. And Joe Biden has discredited the opposition. And even the Obamas, who were very prominent in this weird surrogate presidency where they kind of operated the gears and levers of the Biden administration while he was a waxen effigy, they've been discredited. They put their political capital out on the campaign trail and were refuted. So I don't see any institutional resistance that's going to materialize because Trump is onto them, and I don't see any Democratic I mean, it's there, but they don't have any strong leaders. There's no leader of the Democratic Party to galvanize them. I'm an adherent to that view, and I've been criticized for saying that, because to embrace that view entails that you're not sufficiently sensitive to all the things they did to Trump. And it suggests that maybe they wouldn't have tried to destroy him financially had he been president, or the E. Jean Carroll, all of that. The second impeachment and the assassination. But if you look at it just dispassionately, there's a lot of advantages that he had an interim 4 years. Number one, the Democrats were kind of a one-eyed Jack, and when Biden took over, they flipped it over, and we saw what they're really like. This is not the Harry Truman JFK party. This was a radical neo-socialist Jacobin globalist party. So they destroyed the border in a way we've destroyed the border, the Soros crime wave, the 4 to 6 trillion in printing money, the Afghanistan, the two theater. They saw the whole project right before their eyes, and it repelled them from the trivial, not the trivial, but cultural issues like transgenderism, or major officials in the government wearing dresses or stealing women's luggage. All of this was just too much, and that was a result of Trump not being there. And then the second thing that happened, Trump, by his own admission, changed in two ways. He was the target of all of these things we've never seen in American history. We've never seen state attorney generals try to take a major presidential candidate off the ballot like 16 did. We've never seen 5 suits and 91 felony indictments. It was just absurd. And we've never seen a candidate almost killed twice. So I guess what I'm saying is, given all of that, Trump became much more, he became angrier, but he also came sort of reflective and said, you know what, they are doing that. I didn't realize that I represent to them a complete repudiation of who they are and where they were going, and they will do anything to destroy me. It's not so much personal like I thought, tit for tat. It's what I represent. And he really sort of transformed himself into the embodiment of a movement rather than Donald Trump, the Manhattan guy with the orange skin. They were always attacking him, and he was tweeting back. His tweet, I mean, he still is ad hominem a lot, but now he looks at the attacks on him kind of in a cosmic level, less about him personally and more about what he represents, and I think he likes that. And he's starting to say, this is about you, not just me, because of what we are trying to do. So yeah, in a weird way, he became a much more empathetic figure. I think if he had been president those years, he would have never had an opportunity to win over Jeff Bezos or Elon Musk, because they went over to him after the Biden administration coerced them, maybe some willingly, that may be the wrong verb, invited them to partner, whether it was Facebook censorship of the laptop, or they sat down Mark Andreessen and said, this is what AI is going to be, and here are the winners and here are the loser companies. And they were terrified of what they saw. And I don't think that would have happened. I think they would have still been limousine liberals had that not happened. Well, that's what Steve Bannon said. He said when he was asked about that dichotomy and paradox, he tried to square the circle by saying, well, they are suppliants. They went on their Hajj to Mar-a-Lago and supplemented themselves and bent the knee. And that's true. The thing, and in theory, they're contradictory to the MAGA people, except he's not really getting Jamie Dimon and the bankers and the financiers there. He's getting people who make rockets, who make Tesla, who opened up X, who have social media, who Bezos, they have newspapers, they have rockets, they revolutionized and the way we buy things, Amazon. And so I guess what that appeal is to the MAGA people, that these are sort of can-do people, and they can lend their expertise to make the country rich rather than just themselves. There's just two other real quick points. One is These tech lords do not really, I mean, they're political, but they only have one overriding political interest,